welcome again from me. Since it's such a small group, I don't think I need to run through every Zoom housekeeping item, but just wanted to remind the group that if you can stay muted unless you're asked to unmute or participating in the conversation. Feel free to change your name, like thank you, Jen, to include your class year, which is great. If you need the reaction button for, like raising your hand or anything like that, that's at the bottom right of the screen. And I've also turned on closed captioning if that's something that you will need. So I guess with that, I'll pass it to Lori and Caroline.
Great, thank you, Meredith. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 virtual Bates Reunion Alumni and Admission Session. I think you all are current volunteers, if I'm correct. So forgive us if we repeat some stuff that you are already familiar with. We are recording this and we want to be able to provide it for other prospective AIA volunteers. Again, my name is Lori Doobie. I am the coordinator of alumni and admission engagement. I'm in my 4th year here at Bates. I am the main contact for AIA, and I'm here for any of your questions throughout the year. I also work closely with Caroline Berlin. Caroline, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi folks. Caroline Berlin, as Lori said. I'm a senior assistant dean of admission in the office, and I've been at Bates same amount of time as Lori, actually. We're both going into our 5th year at Bates and the program. So it's really great to see more folks instead of just emailing you. So thank you for joining us.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so that we can do a quick review of the agenda. It's nothing too intense, but just bear with me for a moment. So obviously we've already done the welcome and introductions. Caroline is going to talk in depth about the admission cycle and review. I will go into the Alumni Portal. If some of you folks haven't been active recently, maybe you haven't had the opportunity to see the portal, and I can get you familiar with the portal. So we'll walk through actually selecting a student to interview. And Caroline will talk in detail about informational interviews and why the interviews have been changed to informational interviews. I will discuss the plan going forward for 2021 and 2022 and other ways to get involved. And at the end, we'll open it up for a Q&A, and that's pretty much it. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. Caroline, do you want to get started with the admission cycle and review?
Yeah, so Bates had another really great year in terms of admission statistics. It wasn't a record year, but really in line with where we were 2 years ago. Obviously, with this pandemic, things were really up in the air this past year. We were really unsure how many applications we would get, if we would be able to enroll a class. Fortunately, I can tell you that we are. That was very successful. We will have a class of 2025, and we're very excited for them. We had about 7,400 applications for this cycle. So again, in line with about 2 years ago. A good trend that we're very excited to continue to see that every year our applications, we're seeing growth in students from outside of New England, whereas Bates has traditionally been a school that mostly recruits from Massachusetts. We're really getting out there a lot more now. Seeing a growth in our pool in terms of students who are first generation to college, students of color. We're seeing more applications from students from rural areas. So all of those students who sometimes are harder to reach or underrepresented at Bates, we are seeing growth in that area, which is exciting, and growth in the incoming class. Admission will probably be announcing a little more, but we're also taking part of the Schuler initiative, which is a really excellent opportunity and a lot of funding to help bring Pell eligible students to Bates. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. So that was just kind of roughly how many applications we received last year. Another question we had, not only of if we would get applications at all, was also, would folks still be excited about Bates if they couldn't visit? Most schools, as you probably know, were virtual only. And we did have a robust cohort or robust slate of offerings, the traditional like info sessions, kind of a guided tour. It's hard to do it virtually, but it was like through the virtual tour, and interviews all remained online. And we were really happy to see that, yeah, the enthusiasm was still there. Students were still really eager to, even if it was virtual, they wanted to do programming, they wanted to reach out, they continued to ask for alumni interviews. So we were excited to see that there was still engagement. And as I said, we enrolled a class. So people are still really enthusiastic about Bates. I mentioned that we did still see plenty of alumni interview requests. There was still a bit of a dip, but a lot of demand nonetheless. We're not actually meeting 100% of our demand, which is fine. We're a growing program. And in fact, actually this past year, we did you guys did a really amazing job. So alumni completed, I think it was 531 interviews, or 62% of requests. Which last year we met 34% of requests. So we kind of had like a gigantic leap. Every year we're kind of filling more requests, which is really exciting.
Can I just add something really quickly there? Sorry to interrupt, Caroline, but I also wanted to mention that out of those 524 interviews that took place, 203 of those students were admitted. So I think that's pretty significant.
Absolutely. Thank you. I should have that number written down. Yeah, because those are the students who are enthusiastic about Bates. They're highly qualified and we're excited about them. So the interviews you guys provide are really integral to our process. And yeah, I think that's just kind of the up top overview. I think we'll dive in a little bit into the portal now.
Great. So really quickly, I am going to go ahead and share my screen here. Now, you folks probably have been in the portal, but again, since we are recording this for others, I am going to go ahead and go through all of these steps. So again, I apologize if it seems a bit redundant. Hold on here. Let's see. So once you go ahead and log into the portal, you will receive your login credentials through an email from me. So once you receive those credentials, you can then visit the portal, enter in your username, which is your email, and then you'll be given a PIN, which is what I just entered. Once you do that, you have to change your password. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the, whoops, that was wrong. It does require that it's 12 characters long, 1 capital letter, 1 number, and there has to be a character involved in the password. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that. And there we go. So now we are in the alumni portal. And if you scroll down, you will see a message here that isn't usually there. But it just basically informs you that the interview process has been paused for the summer. Students can't currently request an interview, and we aren't asking our alums to log into the portal because obviously it's not active. You need to enjoy your summer, and we'll start up at the end of August. So that's all that highlighted message is. Below that is the admission interview deadlines. It hasn't been updated yet, but it will be updated in the coming weeks. And here you can see early decision applicants have a deadline of November 1st to request their interview. They need to complete their interview by November 14th. And we ask you, the alumni interviewer, to submit your interview details by November 20th, and so on. You can see early decision 2, regular decision, and transfer. This is very important. Obviously, we want to give first dibs to our early decision applicants, and then early decision 2, and then regular decision and transfer from that point on. So over to the left, you will see highlighted in blue. This is valuable resource for if you want to just kind of a refresher on the process, or maybe it's your first time doing an interview and you want to get a feel for how the interview flow should go. This is very helpful. This interview process will walk you through the process from the beginning to the end, from when the student requests the interview to when you submit your interview details. So if you want a little refresher, you can go ahead and click on that. Then there's the guide to interview, which provides a comprehensive outline for the interview and the interview details that need to be submitted. We also have Alumni Portal login instructions. And here at Bates, we use Zoom across the campus for all our meetings and virtual events. So we have provided Zoom resource here, how to sign up for Zoom for free, a quick start guide for new Zoom users, frequently asked questions about Zoom, how to schedule meetings, joining meetings, and how to incorporate your Zoom meetings in your Google Calendar, or if you use Outlook, we also have the video for that as well. Let's just take a step back. Underneath that is frequently asked questions that we get from our AIA volunteers, and it might be worth scrolling through there. You may be able to get some answers for questions that you have through that resource. And then there's the Bates fact sheet. And I feel that this is helpful for alums that maybe it's been some time since you've been at Bates and you just want a bit of a refresher. It does give you an idea of the graduation requirements, research opportunities, the opportunities to study abroad, and how to get an internship, things to do at Bates, and also it gives a little detail about financial aid. So that's a good thing to read over in order to prepare for an interview. And then underneath that, we had a training recording that we did in the fall of last year when we went virtual. So this is from last, I believe, September or so. And you can always watch that, but we're going to cover a lot of that same material in this session here. So below that, if you continue to scroll down where it says my interview assignments, that is where your interviews that you select, the student's name would populate here. Right now, I don't have any students selected, so obviously there's no name. Below that, you can see this would be my address. So this is the address that is used for determining which students are in my area. And just to be clear, where these interviews take place virtually, we did expand the radius. So it does look at 100-mile radius from where you are located. So in the cases of those folks that live in Boston, you may see a very lengthy list, whereas someone in Arizona, you may only see one or two, or if that. But anyhow, we did expand that just to give more students an opportunity to interview, as we want to be as accessible, make this interview as accessible to all students as possible. So let's just say I want to go ahead and select this student. I can see they live right next door, and I can see that they recently submitted their request. If I had an application submitted on this student, we would see one of those abbreviations from that deadline grid that I showed you a little earlier. If this was an early decision candidate applicant, it would say ED1. If early decision 2 would be ED2, regular decision would be RD, and a transfer student would show up as TR. If there's nothing there, then we don't have an application for the student yet. Again, we would want you to keep in mind what round they are applying for, and if they're early decision, we want them to be selected first, and so on. Also, the requested date. We'd like to fill these requests as soon as possible. So the further out this date is, please try to select those students first. So I'm going to go ahead and select this student here. And now we can see the student's name. Again, if they had submitted an application, we would see their round here, the school that they currently attend, their academic interests, I also believe that if they have extracurricular interests, that would show up as well. And the interview status is that the student hasn't been selected. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I wanted to interview the student. So I'm going to go ahead and select the student. The name will then populate in my interview assignments, and the status shows as pending. So it looks like this interview hasn't taken place yet to me. It is the responsibility of the AIA volunteer to reach out to this student to find a time that works where you can have the virtual interview. So if I click on Alexis's name, I am then going to see her email address, and I would then reach out to her as soon as possible, just so that we can be timely with our requests and try and find a time to interview her. I would encourage you to be very specific in your subject line, because sometimes students don't recognize the email and they may skip over it, or in some cases it may go into their spam folder, junk folder. So if you can be specific in that subject line, I think it's very helpful. And don't be offended if you don't hear back from a student. You can always reach out to me via email and I can nudge the student, because again, a lot of times they may miss the email or not realize that you're the alumni interviewer reaching out to them. So let's just say I reach out to Alexis and we aren't able to find a time to meet, and it's just not going to work. So I can go into Alexis's request here and I can simply unselect her. And once I unselect her, she will then be removed from my list and she will then go back into the alumni portal. I also want to mention at this time that when you log into the portal and you see several students listed there, you aren't the only alum that are seeing those names. Some of our alums think that they're responsible to interview all of those students, and that is not what we're asking for. Those same names will appear in the lists of other alums around you. So don't feel pressured if you see a long list. After the interview has taken place, a very important final step is that we do need for you to submit the interview details. And it's a very quick and simple process. All you do is click on here and it's going to bring you to another screen. We ask that you fill in your name, your class year, and the date of the interview, and then hit submit. And what happens then is that your name will then show up in the student's file, your class year. We would be able to reach out to you if we had any questions about the student, but we know that that interview has taken place. If that's not completed, we don't know that the interview has taken place. So that's a very, very important step. So that's pretty much it as far as selecting a student. And that is also it as far as the training materials here. If you see something in this alumni portal and you have some, tips or thoughts, input, anything, we would love to hear from you, because obviously we don't catch everything, and we do rely on you to let us know what works and what doesn't. So we look forward to hearing from you if you have any issues with that. At this time, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and maybe Caroline, you can talk in detail about the informational interview, the reason for the change, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lori. So for those of you who've maybe been out and haven't been keeping up with some of the AA changes recently, the big change we made for this past cycle, so this past year, is that all interviews, both the ones that alumni conducted and the ones that we would traditionally conduct on campus by trained students, all of that moved from being evaluative to informational. So that is, you notice you're just submitting interview details, just letting us know that it happened and not submitting a report anymore. And we just wanted to give you a little clarity about why we made that change, how the admission committee now looks at applications and determines fit and interest, and also a little conversation around conducting an informational interview, because it's mostly the same, but a little different. So up at the top, why did we move to informational interviews? There were a number of things we were thinking about. First, we were thinking about equity of student experience. Some students get a lot of preparation for interviews and they come into it and they're really comfortable. Some students, they have absolutely no prep. They've never done an interview in their life. And particularly for our students who maybe they're in really large schools, large class sizes, this might be the first time that they've kind of been put one-on-one with like an older student or an adult like this and asked to speak eloquently about their life. So we knew that for some students, it was this really intimidating barrier. We did look at the data and we found that we looked at like the numbers, and our applicant pool was far more diverse than the students who were typically interviewing. So we are looking at this data and saying, okay, there's something here that feels like a barrier to students. So we were thinking about this comfort, this preparation. Another thing we were thinking about is bias in the interview reports. In the office, we can train our students pretty robustly. You know, they can go through weeks of training, so we can make sure that you know, they go through equity, bias training, et cetera. With our alumni, we know that you guys have really busy lives, and while we do love to offer training, it's typically like an hour. And so that did bring up a question of, if we can't really adequately say that we've trained our alumni to consider a lot of all these nuances when they write up a report, then are we introducing bias to our reading process? So that was a piece we were thinking about, just mostly the student experience, and then also how we were reading those interview reports. And while we were balancing maybe the cons of doing interview reports, we looked at the pros. And what we found is that our interview reports were overwhelmingly positive. There was almost never any negative interviews, which I think is exciting. I think it means that Bates is recruiting and like reaching out to students who are already, you know, like a good fit. They're excited about a small liberal arts college. And the students who are reaching out and requesting interviews are likewise like actually interested. So that was good that they were all really positive. We were also noticing that it wasn't really telling us any new information. Typically, you know, we were learning about their academic interests, their extracurriculars. A lot of that already came out in the application. Sometimes there was some like additional personal information, but again, we asked ourselves, well, should students be trying to share this information through an intermediary, AKA an interviewee, or should we be encouraging them to just directly on their application let us know about some of this more personal information? So as we thought about maybe the drawbacks, we were looking at these pros and saying, well, we weren't learning much from the interview report. As I said, they were overwhelmingly positive, not much new information. And I'll also say that interviews didn't really change student decisions. It was usually just kind of like a little icing on top. Like when you get really excited about admitting a student, you can be like, and they had a great interview, yay. So it just wasn't bringing a lot to the process. And in a bit, we'll chat about, well, this is a good transition to what does the actual process look like then? If we're not looking at interview reports, then how are we determining if a student is interested in Bates? How are we determining that they'd be a good fit for our community? Which is all really great questions. So I have, sorry, let me look at my document. So we're looking at fit, I think, through a broader lens more and more, as again, we think about expanding access to Bates. Like there's just so many new types of people, so many new types of students who are applying to Bates who never did before. And I think we're thinking a lot less about, oh, do they like hiking? And a lot more, what are the real core like values that Bates has? What makes a Bates student? And we realized, you know, that's curiosity. It's a desire to learn about the world and others. It's a desire to be part of this community, share what you do, elevate others. So yeah, that academic and world curiosity. And so we're less concerned again with that list of activities and more interested in, you know, the student's essay, how they write about themselves, the recommendation letters, how a student conducts themselves in a classroom. So again, thinking about fit in kind of this broader context, community building and a desire to learn. And as I said, we learn about that through the essay, recommendation letters, sometimes, and especially also how they write about their extracurriculars. You can kind of, students get like a nice little blurb where they can say what each activity is, and you can get a sense from there. So we are still kind of thinking about fit. We all are also still thinking about interest. We do still track demonstrated interest in the process. but that can come across in a lot of different ways. So students don't have to interview if that, like we said, if it's uncomfortable for students, that one-on-one, there are other things they can do. They can do the info session, they can hop on a tour. We've known students also sometimes like more casual chats with other current students. So that's something we've been doing more. So we are still tracking, like I said, that interest, but just really allowing students to demonstrate that interest in a variety of ways that feels more approachable to them. So that's kind of where we are now. And now that we've been through an admission cycle with informational interviews, we are positive. We feel that it didn't really take away anything from the process. We were definitely adequately able to look at students holistically and decide if they were interested in Bates as well. And something else I wanted to touch on before I kind of like open this up for questions, because I'm sure you might have plenty, is we had a bunch of questions like, okay, this is all great. How do you even conduct an informational interview then? Which is a really good question. And ultimately, it's pretty much the same thing, but it kind of, encourages alums, I think, to make a little bit of like a lens switch. I encourage our volunteers, our interviewers to really think less about, okay, like evaluating the student, obviously, and like writing up this report and reporting back to the admission committee, taking that off the table and really seeing the interview as an opportunity for the student. Just helping the student understand what the Bates community is like, if it feels like it's going to be a good fit for their personality and their goals. And that doesn't have to be meaning you answer their super specific questions. It can still take kind of that traditional format. You can say like, okay, what are your favorite classes? What are you interested in? And part of that might be like, if they want something really specific, maybe a small liberal arts college isn't the best fit. But a lot of that may be like, okay, what are your favorite classes and who are your favorite teachers? Oh, you really like that small class size. You really like getting to know your teachers. You love having teachers who are enthusiastic about the subject. This was my experience at Bates. Like, these are the professors I knew and the relationship we had. Just giving them a sense of like what the academic community is like, the opportunities you had at Bates, maybe talking about a thesis. Again, like it doesn't have to be the area they're interested in, just giving them a sense of what it's like. Same with the extracurriculars. You don't have to know the 100+ clubs we have on campus. You don't have to like tell them like, yes, we do have horseback riding. It's again, just giving them a sense of what the community felt like to you, what the community values. Again, just really helping the student get a sense of, is this where they want to be? Is this a good fit? So you can still ask, like I said, a lot of those same questions, academics, extracurriculars, the fun ones about like, who are your friends? Who do you like as teachers? Like helping them see themselves in the community. And yeah, the community culture they're looking at. And also you guys have the hindsight of having graduated and gone out in the world. And you can also, unlike our current students, really speak to, if you're a more recent alum, the Center for Purposeful Work, but more broadly, like the alumni network, what it's like to still be a Batesy years later, how the school kind of like prepared you. And students really appreciate that insight as well. So emphasizing ultimately, you don't need to know the answer to every question, and to be a little less worried about like, okay, do they actually care about Bates? Because as you know, as we learned from our overwhelmingly positive interviews, and as Lori said, nearly half of the students we interviewed were admitted, these are students who are already really enthusiastic about Bates. So we're less worried about like trying to suss out the people who are just going through the process, and a lot more interested in just making this a more human process for our students. So that is a lot of talking from me, but out of curiosity, did either of you three conduct an informational interview this year, and how did it go for you? Or any questions as well?
I think John Howard had the record this year, right?
I thought so.
Yes, he was a rock star.
Yeah, he's famous.
Are you talking about me?
We are.
I'm sorry, I was late to the show.
Oh, no.
I did a lot this year because every time I logged in, I swear I must have had 100 names there waiting. And the list never diminished. So I was like, these poor kids were not getting interviews. So I just ran through the list. You know, it was kind of easier doing it on Zoom.
That's what we've heard.
Because you didn't have to go anywhere. I'll tell you, my observation this year was a lot of stress in the system.
Hmm.
Like I found the kids this year were, because of the pandemic, they were like, I think particularly not stressed about the interview, but just stressed about the whole actually picking a college and not being able to go visit it.
Mm.
That was my observation for this year. And actually, you can talk to Lee. Lee always knew when I didn't like somebody when I used to do those write-ups. She would call me out on that. It's like, you definitely didn't like that kid. Now I wouldn't say it as I wouldn't go outright and say don't accept this kid, but I would. She could always tell. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were here for this part, John, but Lori was mentioning when we were looking at the portal. Where are you located, by the way, John? I imagine it's a popular area.
I'm in Southern Connecticut, just outside of New York. Yeah.
Yeah, a big pro-Bates area. So you are going to see a lot of requests. Fortunately, other volunteers in your area do see those requests.
Yeah.
And part of the reason we did also go into informational interviews was knowing that we weren't meeting 100% of the requests, which is totally fine. Like I said, we're a growing program, but we didn't want students to kind of be penalized. Like if this was like the penultimate demonstration of interest, they requested, like they did what they could. It's not their fault that they didn't get matched.
Sure.
So that was another piece of the logic, but also you are obviously a rock star. Newsletter famous, John, and we appreciate all your work. But again, our students, you know, you don't have to do more than 2 or 3. Again, it's really what you have time for.
Well, that's very nice of you, but I don't know about that. I mean, I did what I could. You know, I will tell you this. Here's some feedback for you guys.
Mhm.
I definitely talked to kids that had more than one interview.
Mhm.
Okay, so I ran into that a couple of times, and I reached out to kids, and they're like, "Oh, I already had an interview with so and so." They were still on the list, and I think it was when they interviewed with students on campus.
Yes, we didn't clamp down on that this year because we felt it was just another opportunity. Here we are in the middle of a pandemic. They're trying to pick a college, and it just gave them another touch point. So we weren't overly critical on situations where they did have more than one interview. If they interviewed with a student and they still wanted to interview with an alum, we didn't get too picky about that.
And that's what was curious is I had reached out to kids. They already had an interview, but they said, "I would still love to talk to you some more." And so I was happy to took them up.
That's wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
And they were and they all had really good questions this year. I mean, but you could tell that they were stressed about choosing a college without going there. Now, I'm not going to tell you that a couple of them did sneak up there. Okay.
We're aware.
No.
we saw them.
And I was like, you know what? I didn't hear that. I did not hear that. But I know some of them were sneaking up there, especially after being accepted. So.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Anecdotally on our end, we also, I think saw that increased anxiety, again, particularly from admitted students. And the good news is the campus is open now over the summer for limited tours. And hopefully, you know, we're seeing how the fall is going to roll out. But yeah, there was definitely increased anxiety with students.
Yeah, that's my walk away from this year.
Yeah.
Everything else is good, though. I think the portal's simple. I mean, the portal's simple. You know,
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Pretty intuitive. You know, the email link doesn't work. When you click on a student's email, like when you click on the email address, the logic on that doesn't work. You have to.
Okay.
The logic there doesn't work. You have to paste it in. You have to take out the email address and paste it into a program. So that could be fixed.
Take
Great.
a look.
Everything else is I mean, it's pretty simple.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Do you have oh, sorry, go ahead.
Do you guys, I guess, just anticipate keeping the virtual model then moving forward?
That's next to discuss on our agenda. So yes, definitely. Where we've seen such an increase in interviews that took place. It's definitely been because of the ability to do it virtually. We're going to stick with that. And we don't know if we will end up going back to face-to-face interviews, but who knows? I ask that you just kind of stay tuned. And if anything changes, we'll definitely keep you up to speed with those changes going forward.
So did you guys do more this year? Were more interviews done because it was virtual this year?
Yes, we pretty much doubled the number of interviews that took place. So I think last year, 34% of our requests were met. This year, was it 62 or 64% of our requests were met? So big increase, big increase.
So it doubled? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry, I've been trying to ask a question, but as John said, like sometimes people get multiple interviews. So does the portal like, I guess not register if like a person has already like kind of claimed or like selected that student?
It does. It
Oh,
does.
okay.
There are some cases where a student may have requested an interview with one of our senior fellows, and they also requested an interview with an alumni interviewer. Those are two different
Oh.
systems. So that's how that happens. But again, we weren't critical of it because we just felt that it was another opportunity for these students to learn more about Bates. And where these interviews aren't evaluative anymore, it didn't seem to be an issue. They just want to learn more about Bates. So why are we going to kind of hold them back with that? So that's why we weren't overly critical. Now, is it possible that a student could get 2 alumni interview requests? I don't believe so, because once they have been selected in the portal and once the interview details have been submitted, they're no longer in the portal as active. So I don't think that it's possible for them to be selected for 2 alumni interviews.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Good question, though.
Thanks for
Thank you.
clarifying that. That kind of
No
made more
problem.
sense.
Sure. So maybe at this time, well, I guess I just want to make sure that nobody else has any other questions about the informational interview. You good? Okay, great. So at this time, we'll go forward with other ways to get involved. I'm not sure if you folks were familiar with the alumni panels that we did this past year, but that was something that we kind of sprinkled in our events. And basically I reached out to alums specific in regards to subjects that they were interested in discussing. So what I'm going to do in the chat is I am going to share a form. I'm not sure if you folks have filled it out yet or not, but this is the AIA activity interest form. And this would give us an idea if you are interested in participating in panels, virtual panels that discuss things from academics, student life, diversity, inclusion, post careers and postgraduate outcomes and student life. And you know, if you wouldn't mind taking the time to complete that form and just let us know if you are interested in participating in virtual alumni panels, what you might be interested in talking about, that would be a huge help. So that is another way to get involved with AIA. In the past, we have had alums represent Bates at college fairs. We don't know if we're going to be doing that in the fall. We didn't do it last fall because of the pandemic. So that could be an option. But at this time, it's not. I will keep you informed if that changes. But also, some high schools do virtual college fairs and they ask for alums to participate in these virtual college fairs. So that could be an option as well. We would just want to know if that is something you're interested in participating in. We would love to have your help. Also, we have heard from our AIA volunteers that they're very interested in learning more about the behind the scenes process in selecting applicants. So in July, we are actually going to hold 2 case studies. One is going to be held on July 13th from 2 to 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. We're also going to do another one on July 21st from 7 to 8:30, again, Eastern Standard Time. And this will be a great opportunity to learn more about what goes behind the scenes when it comes to reading applications, selecting applicants, admitting students. And Caroline can certainly talk more about the case study as she's going to be leading that training. Caroline, do you want to add a little?
Yeah, case studies are tons of fun. Essentially, you will be getting not real student applications, but it will be all the same information. So you'll see the format of what students actually fill out. You'll see a couple different applications. We'll give you kind of a fake school profile, and you get to be the admission committee. You guys get to choose who to admit. And hopefully, and we'll be there, a lot of our staff will be there to just give you some insight to how we read an application, things we look for, all that good stuff. So you'll get a really close look at what the holistic admission process looks like at Bates. And hopefully that, yeah, gives you a sense of not just where the interview and connection fits in the process, but also just, yeah, like the whole shebang, what students actually deal with every year.
And the registration for that will probably be going out in the coming week. So just keep an eye on your emails if you are at all interested in signing up for one of those sessions. No need to sign up for both because they will be reviewing the same applications, but we would love to have you take part and learn a little bit more. And it may help you when it comes to interview time. You can speak to exactly what it is they're looking for in an application. So I think it would be very helpful.
And I think this brings us to our Q&A section. Are there any questions just at all about the program, interviews, the portal, all that good stuff?
So sorry, just remind me one more time. So when does kind of the cycle start again that we would start?
We'll open that up at the end of August. And again, we'll send out emails when that goes live. We'll keep you informed. And then you will receive the weekly emails when there isn't a student that has requested an interview, and it populates in your portal. So you'll know if there's students in your area. And I did want to add, Grace, in the case where you're in Arizona and you don't see a lot of student requests, would it be okay if I reached out to you for students that don't get picked up, that may not be close to you, but still are interested in an interview?
Yeah, I think that I'd be, since the interviews are virtual, I'm happy to interview students if they are like, in other states as well.
Great. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there a way to increase the radius of
There is, but unfortunately we have to do it across the board. So in John's case, and probably in Jen's case, their list would be astronomical. I mean, it would just be so long and overwhelming. And poor John has already feeling guilty that these students aren't getting an interview. I'm just going to make a special note to reach out to you because I have several students that don't get picked up. And if I know, I do a lot of outreach trying to get other alums, but sometimes I don't hear back. But if I know that you are eager to interview, I will definitely keep you on the top of my list.
Sure. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, and Jen just asked this, but I just want to clarify. So it's going to be virtual again for the next admission cycle?
It is.
Is there, if somebody wants to meet in person though, is that an option or are we shutting that down?
At this point, we are just going to continue with the virtual interviews. If that changes, I will be in contact with you. But I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case come the fall. We don't want to put any pressure on either the alum or the student to feel obligated to meet face-to-face if one or the other may be a little uncomfortable. So I think that just for consistency, we're going to just kind of stay on this track. It has worked very well. So we'll keep you informed if that changes though.
It's easy, so I'm not, you know.
So good to hear.
Yeah, it's handy.
Great.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Do we win some kind of award? There's only 3 people on attending this. I think we get a special award, right?
I
Jenny?
think so too.
Right, Jenny? Right? I think we win an award or something.
We'll put a gold star by your names.
There you go.
There you go. You guys were terrific. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. I wish it was a larger group, but at the same time, it was great to have, you know, this more conversational session versus Caroline and I just sitting back here, spitting off all these facts. So I'm so glad that the 3 of you could join us today. And I look forward to continuing our work. So if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate in reaching out to me or Caroline. I am, again, going to just put my email address in the chat, just so you have it. You can also reach me at aia@bates.edu, but that's my direct email. So please feel free to reach out to me at any time. And again, thank you for the work you do for us. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
to you
guys.
guys,
Appreciate
too.
it. Thank
Take
you.
care. Have a great summer.
Bye, Jen. Bye, Grace.
Bye.